Hey everybody, I'm Dominic Mancini. I'll be your host for this special Q&A with the great Steven Weber. We're live on Facebook and YouTube, so thanks to everyone who's watching us live. Feel free to drop some questions down below, and if we have time in the broadcast, we'll get to them. If you'd like some private time with Steven, following this Q&A, he'll be doing one-on-one video meet and greets at Zoom. If you're interested in that, you can go to fullempirepromotions.com to book your session. Sales for the video meet and greets will end about 4:45, so you have about 45 minutes to book that. And you can also get autographs and video greetings. So that's enough for me. It's my honor and privilege to welcome my friend, client, the talented actor from Wings, The Shining, Studio 60 on Sunset Strip, Jeffrey, Single White Female, Ballers, one of my personal favorites, Dracula, Dead and Loving It, and most recently, 13 Reasons Why on Netflix. He's hilarious, he's charming, and he's freakishly talented. Steven Weber.
That's me, hilarious, charming, and freakishly talented.
How are you, Steven?
I'm good, brother. Good to see you. That's such an incredibly violent introductory video. It's I didn't know what the hell was going on. The first thing you see is me smashing a door open with a mallet, and I'm getting my eye cord out with the heel of a shoe. So,
well, I tried to balance it out a little bit. I put a Hallmark movie in there, you know. But,
yeah, but even the Hallmark movie looked menacing, you know.
So how are you doing in your part of the world?
Everything's good. I'm in LA. I mean, I'm lucky because there's room to roam in my neighborhood here in kind of the western portion of LA, Santa Monica area. So, you know, I'm not like my mom lives in New York, and it's tougher there. It's getting better, but you know, it's okay. It's frustrating, of course, but I feel like we got to do our part and follow minimal protocols in order to get going. You know, but I'm glad that you and I have the opportunity to mess around a little bit and move out of our circles of you know, our circled wagons a little more. If you know what I mean. Yeah,
absolutely.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, I'm keeping busy doing this stuff and keeping up with all the regular life stuff. You know, just went to the dentist and got a cleaning earlier. You know,
okay, that's enough of that. Really don't do that at all.
You know, I figured if I'm talking to Steven Weber, I have to have, you know, nice looking teeth. So you know.
Fine.
Yeah. So I want to start off with your background a little bit, Steven. Is that drywall? No, I'm just kidding. You were born in Queens, correct? Queens, New York?
Born in Queens, which is probably the least interesting borough in New York City, but until fairly recently, it's a real kind of an ethnic culinary melting pot, which is really fantastic. But yes, Queens.
And you grew up and you were born and raised in Queens?
I was born and raised in Queens, and went to school there, and I went to the High School of Performing Arts, which a lot of people know about because of the movie Fame. Went there in the 70s, which is like a century ago, and and took theater training, and then I went to another upstate New York university called SUNY, which stands for State University of New York. Took theater there, and then started working. You know, right after I got out of school. I mean, I had odd jobs and all that stuff, but started looking for work, put it that way.
Right. So theater came first, or was it commercials?
No. Well, you know, I did commercials when I was a little kid. Yeah, I forgot about that. When I was really small, I'm going to say like, you know, anywhere from 9 to 12 years old, I did a few commercials in New York during the time when commercials often ran to 60 seconds or more. And so I did those. I pursued that a little bit, and then kind of stopped. It didn't go to my head, and I think whatever money I made, my parents spent. So, you know, but I definitely had the bug.
Yeah, seemed like a natural. So was Flamingo Kid your first film?
You know, it's hard for me to remember. I think Flamingo Kid was probably the first decently budgeted film.
Right.
I think I had done a small, you know, a couple of small independent movies for little or no money, and little or few viewers saw it. But I think that was probably the big first big movie. It's been so long ago, man. I can't remember.
Yeah, you've worked nonstop. So
well, a lot of years passing.
Yeah, and do you remember meeting Gary Marshall on the set of that, interacting with him at all?
Well, I do. I mean, I had to audition for it, and there was a tiny part, barely a part. It was a character that was spoken about more than anything else. The plot of the Flamingo Kid, which had Matt Dillon in it, and Richard Crenna, and a really an unknown Marissa Tomei is in it too. It's about kids, I think, in the '60s who work at a beach club in I think Far Rockaway or Brooklyn, something like that, in the summer, and their adventures. It's actually a really good movie, and Gary Marshall directed it. And so one of the characters was a guy named Paul something or other, and he's the head cabana boy, and he deals, or rather he doesn't deal. There's a card game involving all these kind of rich, cool older dudes, and in order to make money, you have to become kind of like their waiter and butler, bartender. And so I was the key. I was the person who they all aspired to be, and I was able to improvise one line which made it into the movie, which was "Keep your hands off the popcorn." See, genius.
See that?
Genius. And so I met Gary Marshall before we did it. I met him in his office, and I told him that I had actually had experience doing just that by working up at hotels for a couple of summers in the Catskill region in upstate New York. And I did that, and so he gave me the role. The rest is history.
Yeah, and then you did Hamburger Hill, where you worked with another great cast, Dylan McDermott again, and then Don Cheadle and so many other.
Courtney Vance, and also it was just a fantastic movie that a lot of actually Vietnam vets to this day will tell me how accurate it was. Yeah, it was 3 months in the Philippines with a bunch of wussy actors pretending to be soldiers. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and how was the vibe on set? Did anybody get emotional considering the subject matter?
Well, I mean, we were all young actors, and there were a lot of heavy scenes in it, and we were all doing the best we could. I mean, we definitely had a lot of fun because we were play acting and we were in an exotic environment. But we knew that we had some sort of responsibility to help tell stories with accuracy.
Right.
We had a technical advisor on it, a real tough old bird named Al Neal, who was, I think, the highest decorated non-com in Vietnam. And this guy he was from Kentucky, always had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He didn't look tough, but clearly this guy was. And at one point during the filming, I think I had a death scene in it, and I'm covered with fake blood, and I'm just kind of waiting in the sun to shoot, and it's sticky and uncomfortable. I was just sort of sitting there, forgetting that I'm just covered in gore. And I look up, and he was about 30 feet away from me, and he was staring at me in a way that I had not seen him look at us before. He'd been kind of bemused by the whole thing. He's getting paid to train all these, these sissies and all that stuff. And he had a good time. But I looked up, and I saw him see me or see something that I have to believe kind of reminded him of something. So, there were a few moments of that kind of heaviness, and we form a bond, and with each other, and then some people, when their characters died, they had to go home. But we've all, I'll tell you what, we've all stayed close over the years. One of our buddies who was in the film, Tim Quill, actually passed away a couple of years ago, and it all kind of brought us back together a little bit to pay tribute to him. Yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Yeah. Well, if we thought your death on that was bad. In 1992, you got the pointed end of a high heel from Jennifer Jason Leigh, and single white female. This has to be one of the most oddest deaths I think I've ever seen on screen. Can you talk about filming that scene?
No. Yes, of course. It's fairly iconic. People remember that, and the whole movie is kind of an iconic entry from the 1980s. We were all clad in our 80s but not corny stuff. But you know, it was really the first of the kind of scary, I want to say, roommate movies, or I don't know. It had a vibe that several movies emulated after that. Yeah. So in that scene, I get slammed in the eye socket with a high heel because I'm, you know, it's not a great character to begin with. I two-time my fiance, and then I end up having sex with Jennifer Jason Leigh, at first thinking it's Bridget Fonda because they look almost identical.
Right.
And yet, even when I realize it, to my horror, I still kind of finish having sex with her. So it's like, eh. So when she threatens to expose me and I threaten to expose her, that's when she picks up her high heel and backhand. It was really nice.
Yeah.
It was like Chrissy Everett. It was like Serena Williams. Bam.
Yeah.
And so I had to, you know, they actually cut off the heel of a shoe and mounted it on some sort of, you know, some sort of thing, appliance that they stuck to my head. And so I walked around with a shoe coming out of my eye, which would actually be a good Halloween costume. It
would be.
I think people should do that.
It would be. Absolutely. The film had kind of a Hitchcockian feel. Do you think that's what Schroeder was going for with Single White Female? And were you familiar with much of his work?
At the time, I sort of, all I knew from Barbet Schroeder was that he had done a movie called Barfly with Mickey Rourke. And he was a very colorful director, European and unpredictable and quite funny. I'm sure he absolutely knew and was paying a kind of homage to Hitchcock, but he's a director of great thrillers. He also did Reversal of Fortune with Jeremy Irons, and so this is his genre. It was pretty cool, but he was making, in a way, a sort of I wouldn't say tongue in cheek, but he set out to make a scary movie, a movie to make the audience jump a little bit. You know, it wasn't deep particularly.
Right.
It was
effective. Yeah, there were a lot of copycats after that weren't done as well. That's for sure. And I know you're a big Trekkie, so how excited were you to guest star on Deep Space Nine?
Well, I actually begged to be on Deep Space Nine. This probably was in 1989 or 90, and Deep Space and The Next Generation shot on the Paramount lot in Los Angeles, where Wings was shot. So I would see actors and background people in costume and makeup walking around the lot all day, and I thought, I want to be part of this. And so I tracked down the casting director, whose name is Junie Lowry, famous and lovely. And I said, please, isn't there anything? And they found this great little part for me in a two-parter, Next Generation, and that's all I did. And 30 years later, I'm part of this. I'm in the Star Trek canon. Somebody even showed me a card with me, like a baseball card with my character on it.
Yeah,
whose name I probably didn't even know back then.
Yeah. I thought it was funny at the Star Trek con when you were saying if they used their nose for nutmeg. You got to grind. I got a kick out of that.
The Bajorans are it's a very powerful race, but they only matter during Christmas when they can do this over your latte.
So Jeffrey came in 1995. This film sort of broke boundaries and really dug into the emotions. How did you approach this role?
Well, it did. I mean, it was Jeffrey was kind of groundbreaking in that it was a comedy that had gay protagonists and gay characters, and it was a comedy. At that time, people were first coming to grips with the idea that there had been this disease, this plague that was ravaging primarily the gay community, and this was one of the movies that began to kind of humanize gay characters who had been portrayed very unfairly and simplistically for since the beginning of film, I guess. And so for some reason the the role was offered to me, and I jumped at it. First of all, it was a very well-known and well-received, critically received play in New York, and toured all around the world. And you know, my job is actor, and if there's something interesting and challenging, and it comes my way, I wanted to do it. So. And it had a great cast, you know. It had Patrick Stewart, and Michael T. Weiss, and Brian Batt, and Olympia Dukakis, and you name it. And it was shot on location in New York City, so it's even an historical artifact. It was a great time, and I've stayed in touch with pretty much everyone. Just saw Sir Patrick Stewart recently, and we reminisced about that. So yeah, it was a great time. Great time.
Yeah, you went from Deep Space Nine to working with him on Jeffrey. So
that's right.
You know, the force was. You know, I was going to say the force was with you, but that's
well, close
enough.
You're forgiven. Close enough. Well, and one funny story was that we were shooting a scene on the street at night, and Patrick was in character, and I was in character, and there were people watching, and somebody yelled out, "Yo, Kirk!" And you know, he wasn't Kirk, he was Picard. And I could see him do this for a second. He went like, you know, just kind of, all right.
Just roll with
it. Not turn around and say, "I'm Picard, you motherfucker."
Right.
He would never do.
Right. And one of my favorite movies, probably my favorite movie that you did, was Dracula, Dead and Loving It. You know, I watched this at least once a year, and I remember seeing it, you know, in the cinema with my dad when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You got to work with another all-star cast, and including Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks.
Harvey Korman, Amy Beck, Peter McNichol. I mean, it was such a beautiful, fun time for me to work with my idols. I mean, let's face it, I'd grown up watching the Carol Burnett Show, loving Harvey Korman, and of course Mel Brooks. I got much of my comic education by listening to the 2,000-Year-Old Man albums and the original movie The Producers and all that stuff. And there it was, another opportunity that came my way that I'm grateful enough to be able to have taken, and it was fun as hell. And it turns out that, as you know, silly as that film is, Mel has said on the record that his favorite scene in all the films that he shot, the funniest scene, is the one that you show in the opening, where I stake the vampire and I'm splattered with, you know, fire hydrant pressure blood. Excuse me. You can burp on these things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Only human.
It's encouraged.
It's a it's a quarantine belch.
Right.
It's just air that I have to breathe after I take my mask off. Yeah, it was a great time. I mean, I've kept in touch with Mel, and he's, what is he, like 94, for crying out loud? And we were supposed to see each other, but then apocalypse happened, so I'm gonna put it off until we're allowed to intermingle. But yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, that seemed like it. And was that your first time meeting Leslie Nielsen?
First and last, yeah. I mean, he was an interesting guy because he was just slightly past, you know, Naked Gun stuff in a way, and but he was still a huge star and lovely, and of course, legendary prankster on the set. He didn't let you down, but he was also a really pleasant, sweet guy, very game. I mean, in many ways, his comic sensibility and Mel Brooks's were a little different. And so I think that's maybe one reason why the film didn't enjoy as much success as some other Mel Brooks films. There was a little, it's still enjoyable.
Oh, it's great.
You know, I think it's better on the small screen than the big screen, but it's, you know, it's a good one. It's a good one.
It is. Well, in 1997, you stepped into the role that Jack Nicholson made famous, playing Jack Torrance in The Shining.
Yes.
Personally, you know, I prefer Mick Garris's version over Kubrick's, but was it intimidating for you after Nicholson did such a great job?
You know, the funny thing was, well, I mean, I loved Kubrick's version of The Shining. I had not read the book, Stephen King's book, And so that was my only association with it. When the meeting with Mick Garris and Stephen King and Rebecca De Mornay came around, I still had not read anything but the script. Stephen King had done the script adaptation. And I realized that there were a lot of notable differences between that version, which is more faithful to the book,
yes,
and the Kubrick version. So it didn't occur to me to be intimidated by Jack Nicholson. Look, I'll never be Jack Nicholson, you know, one of my heroes.
right.
But this version offered an opportunity that seemed more accessible. It didn't ask for Jack Nicholson. It asked for a guy who, you know, had a drinking problem and was married and, you know, and was living at a weird hotel and was trying to write. And that was it. So that's it. So it didn't intimidate me. If it asked for somebody to approximate the intensity and insanity of a Jack Nicholson, then I definitely would have been overwhelmed, I think.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think you gave the character a nice spin and it kind of made him more human, you know, kind of more relatable.
Well, that's it. You know, the odd thing about Stephen King's stories is that as many monsters and terrifying imagery in them, they're actually accessible stories about real human beings. I mean, they're he wrote a recent story called Rat, which I recorded on audio, and it's scary. But it's about writer's block, you know. It's like, and that's what it's about. And The Shining is about alcoholism, and fear, personal fear. It's not about monsters and boogeymen and all that stuff.
Right.
But so yeah. I mean, look, a lot of people love the Garris version.
Yeah, I think it's
faithful. It's faithful to the book. I mean, look, there's things I would love to redo that I could. I'm a better actor now. I've lived some more life, and I could definitely imbue some moments with a little in a better way. Likewise, there was some technical effects on that old series having to do with the hedge animals, which was CGI in its infancy. It looks a little clunky and cartoonish. That could be redone. But I think we did a really good job, and a lot of people prefer, or actually are definitely fans of Mick's version of it. Yeah,
that's great. Hopefully we get a Blu-ray soon. You know, it hasn't been released on Blu-ray. It'd be good to get a better quality version of it.
Okay.
You know, so was this your first time meeting Mick Garris? I think this is the first time you worked with him, correct?
Yeah, it was the first. We worked together after that several times. We got along so well and had so many similar interests, mostly in the world of horror and fantasy. And I did another thing for him called Desperation, which was another miniseries with Ron Perlman and Annabeth Gish.
Yeah.
And also he encouraged me to write for a series that he was doing called Masters of Horror. And I was a fan of this kind of monster comic magazine called Creepy. That was in the 60s and 70s, and had great artwork by Bernie Wrightson. He's a fantastic illustrator who passed away recently.
Yes.
And so I adapted this great story called Jennifer, and it was directed by Dario Argento. Mick produced the series, but he matched the story up with Dario Argento, who's legendary horror.
Yes. Yep.
And so that was really another Mick Garris association. You know, we've had more sense. Yeah.
And you've done a lot of stuff for Stephen King, including doing the entire audiobook for It.
Yeah.
You think you did every character, didn't you?
I did every character. I did every character. I even read the copyright notices and the everything. Yeah, it was one of my things that I'm proudest of. Got a lot of good critical attention for it, and it's a real deep dive into Stephen King, even deeper than The Shining in a way, because this is unabridged. It is challenging. It's 1,200 pages long. It's terrifying. It's psychological. It's sexual. It is weird, man.
Yeah.
I threw myself into it, and it paid off. So that's one of the things I'm proudest of.
Yeah, well, you did a great job, because I listened to it, and it was.
Thank you, Doc.
better than the movie that came out, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So, did you meet Stephen King on the set of The Shining? Was he on set a lot, and did you get to interact with him at all?
Stephen was there most of the time, in fact, and he was there, and he was lighthearted and super cool. He always was reading something. He was, and always had books in his hand or magazines, always devouring stuff. And he was available to get information and to ask about certain beats and moments. And he was lovely. He was lovely. He even played a small part in it as this ghostly orchestra conductor whose face decays at some point. So he was really enjoying himself. Frank Darabont also was in it, the director of Shawshank,
yeah,
and other movies, and he played a small part as a kind of a zombie ghost guest. It's pretty cool.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I'll have to check it out again.
Yeah.
Well, for the next 7 years, you'd step into the role which a lot of people know you from, as Brian Hackett on the popular series Wings. Again, you work with another great cast of, Amy Yazbek again, and Tim Daly, and
they're not so good.
So many great actors on that.
No, good.
How did Wings get started for you?
Wings came my way through the normal channels where they were holding auditions. I think it was in New York at the time for zany brother, and you just go through the protocols, which is you submit your picture, and resume is submitted to the producers, and they check out one by one. They check each actor who comes in, and I had an audition in New York, and then I had a call back out in LA, and then another one where it was the network test, in which you and the other actors who have made it that far literally step into a room which is filled to varying degrees with network and studio executives, casting people, the producers of the show, and you basically sing for your supper and are chosen based on the performance you give there, based on what people hear and know about you, and whether you're nice enough or funny enough or tall enough or whatever the hell it is. And they I remember Tim was there, Tom Hayden Church was there too,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, was there. Who else? A couple other actors, and they paired us off differently to play the brothers, Joe and Brian. And the funny thing was that eventually Tim and I actually got the role, and Tom Church, who didn't get one of the roles of the brothers, got a great role as Lowell, the mechanic.
Yeah.
So that's how that worked.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a memorable show, and you did it for what, 7 seasons?
I like to say 7.5.
7.5.
Yeah.
Are there any episodes in particular that you're proud of that stand out that you can think of for any reason?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, well, not no, but yes. The ones that I had the most fun in, and usually the ones that I dissolved into puddles of laughter doing. And one is where for some reason Tim and my brother Joe has to dress up as a corpse in an open casket funeral and dress up as a really old man. So they slap a crummy beard on him and a crummy wig, and he's got to be in the casket. And this is only obviously temporarily. And but at some point I have to go up to him in the wake and let him know that there's been a change of plans. It's not temporary anymore. He has to go through with the burial. Even saying that is making me laugh. And so, and of course, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
In order for the plan to succeed, he has to be buried. He had a lot of trouble going through that. Basically, he was in trouble because he had to not move, but it was funny to him, and so we had such chemistry that we can make each other laugh without even having to look at each other. So that was a favorite one. I feel like as the show went on, we became more relaxed and had more fun. More than the show itself, I think we just had such a great time, and I feel like that came across as much as the material did. And for a show that never really won any awards or got very much critical acclaim, it's really beloved. Which
It is.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to know that.
Yeah, and I think because the cast worked so well together with Tony Shalhoub and Amy Asbeck, and you guys just all had really good chemistry, and everybody.
Amy was hilarious. Amy was and still is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. Sure. And she is dark and twisted and fast, crazy fast. And then Tony, of course, is a fantastic, classic comic actor. I mean, Peter Sellers-esque, nuanced, and we used to watch him and say, "What the hell are you doing here, man? What are you doing light entertainment for?" And also Rebecca Shull was amazing as Faye, and our friend David Schramm, who played Roy, the comic villain of the show, who passed away some months ago, and that was a real blow. And of course, we cannot forget Crystal Bernard, who was the unsung heroine of that show. She had comic chops.
Yeah.
I think that were astounding, and she was always, I'm sorry to say, overlooked, especially in those days, when there were so many good shows like, what was it, Cheers and Frasier and everything, all full of fantastic actors.
Yeah.
She, out of everybody in our show, I think, should have been acknowledged. It's hard to do that stuff, and she was perfect at it.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
She was great. So I know you've done a lot of voice work as well, and a lot of voiceover work. And in 1996, you provided the voice of Charlie on All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yes.
How did you get started in voiceover? Was that something that somebody recommended you do, or was it something you just took an interest in?
It's something that I took an interest in. I'd done that. I'd been doing looping and dubbing of foreign films right after I got out of college. I'd always been interested in that side of the business. I was fascinated by watching foreign films or Hercules movies or Japanese movies, and always hearing seemingly the same voices over and over, occasionally brilliantly and often sloppily dubbed. I just thought it would be fun. I just like the whole aesthetic of being behind a microphone and trying to match lip movements and everything. So I somehow found my way into that. And then over time, I did a bunch of animation. Yes, and that was that. I did that for a couple of years. I worked with Dom DeLuise. I worked with Charles Nelson Riley, Ernest Borgnine, and so it was pretty interesting. And I've done. I did a Spider-Man series for a while. Mm-hmm. Bunches of things.
Yeah, you keep busy. Do you prefer voice work over acting, or is one of them more difficult than the other, would you say?
I would say I prefer acting, and acting is more difficult than voice work, but voice work is not a walk in the park. I mean, there are fantastically gifted voice actors whose faces you rarely see, but whose voices you hear all the time, and a lot of the time you don't know it's them, because they are so facile and so versatile.
Yeah.
But I'm by no means minimizing it or minimizing it because it's just easy, because you don't have to memorize lines and you can just show up and do it, which has been the case with me. And obviously, since I'm not a mammoth star in the voiceover world, it's probably because I don't take it as seriously, but I would out there. Anybody? No? How many people are watching this, by the way? 7, right?
No, right now we have 107.
Really?
107 watching.
107.
Yeah.
That's how I'm gonna die at 107.
Well, I hope so.
Live to be 107. Thank you.
Great. It's a race with Betty White.
That's right. Nobody leave.
Yeah. Well, in 1996, you did a musical, and you absolutely smoked the role of Jack Stone in Reefer Madness.
Oh God, it was in '96. Yeah, I guess so.
96. Yeah. Yeah. How much fun was that? You worked with Nev Campbell, and
that's right.
A huge cast of
Alan Cumming, Christian Campbell. I mean, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Was this your first musical? I know you've done a lot of theater, but was this your first musical film?
Well, I don't think it was. And was it 96?
I think it was, yeah.
No, it wasn't.
No?
Mistake, Dom.
95?
You in front of 107 people. I'll tell you why.
108.
Yeah, whatever. Because this was it was post 9/11.
Was it? Oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that new.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because and the reason why I know that is because when the Reefer Madness musical, which was originally on stage, was about to premiere, it premiered on September 11th. It opened in New York on September 11th. Needless to say, it closed immediately after. And so by the time they got this film made, Showtime, it was years after the fact. So Dominic Mancini.
It was 2005, Mary says. So you're
Mary
right.
Beats and yet Mary's right.
Yeah.
Dom's wrong.
That's all right. It happens once in a while.
Very rare. You're pretty good.
You know?
Well, when we do when I start questioning you and you start doing your kind of talk back, I'm going to say, and remember that time you interviewed Steven Weber, who lived to be 107 years old, and you blew that detail on that.
Right, on Reefer Madness of all things.
You fool. And remember Mary Beasley humiliating you in front of those 107 people, 106 people.
Jesus, it's never ends.
It never ends. Now you know what it's like to be in the limelight. It's not all cake and ice cream, buddy.
No, it's not. It's frozen yogurt now. Yeah. So another one of my favorite projects you did, we talked about a little bit earlier, was Masters of Horror, Jennifer. And I know you said Mick Garris kind of influenced you to, or recommended that you write this. Was writing something that you had thought about before that, or was he?
I thought about it and hadn't really done it formally. And I've done it several times since, but I haven't made it I haven't done it so often. I don't know why. I sometimes enjoy doing it, but it's the hardest of everything that I've tried to set my mind to. It just requires discipline, requires being with yourself long period of time, and that's it can be a little tough.
You should be writing comedy. You're a funny guy.
All right, Tom.
Comedies.
All right.
So was this your first time? Obviously, your first time meeting Dario Argento, who I'm a huge fan of. Were you familiar with any of his work, like Suspiria and Deep Red?
Well, yeah, definitely. I was familiar with Suspiria more than anything else, and he was great and hilarious, and didn't speak a lot of English.
No,
and his Italian accent was almost like one that you'd hear some drunk try to do. It was very comic, and he almost talk like this. And you'd think that he was kidding around, but he wasn't. But he was super sweet, very twisted, and in fact, he added several scenes and visuals to an already kind of intense script and story that kind of made me a little nervous. It was just pretty hairy. A couple of things had to be cut out, put it that way. And although you could probably find some of the discarded footage on YouTube.
God, how does it? You mean that was actually more violent?
No, I'm saying it was less violent and less sexual. He made it more violent and more sexual. He took it beyond where the script was. And then we had to take it back from where he took it, back to where he wanted it. It never returned to the quaint, kind of sweet, horribly violent sexual piece that I wrote. He brought it to the next level.
Yeah. Well, those scenes with Carrie Ann Fleming must have just been unbearable to do. I can imagine. I can imagine.
Really uncomfortable. She was fantastic. She was able to bring to a very challenging role amazing humanity and expressivity. Yeah. So props to her.
Yeah. She's doing iZombie now. I think she's on that show.
Oh wait, no, I was on iZombie, and now it's no longer on TV. Listen, Dom, are you having a stroke? I think.
Hold on, maybe more espresso.
Mary, take over.
Oh. Well, we already talked a little bit about Desperation. But that was another great film. You did, another great cast: Tom Skerritt, Henry Thomas, and
yeah, that was done in 1958, right, Dom?
Yeah.
Right. What are you drinking, buddy?
So Desperation, another Stephen King, Mick Garris venture. Who stood out in that to you? Tom Skerritt, what actor?
I think Ron Perlman was, to me, stood out in it. He played the villain, and the thing is that it's not a terribly memorable project, and everybody can speculate as to why. I know we had a good time doing it. But we all got close and we all had fun. Charles Durning was in it. He became a good pal of mine. Fantastic actor. Annabeth Gish, who's hilarious and brilliant. Tom Skerritt, who's interesting, cool, legendary alien, MASH.
Yes. The Dead Zone.
But everything should have worked. I don't know. I just think in a way it was almost like it's like Stephen King grab bag story.
Yeah.
Like, that he had other great, amazing stories and movie versions of his stories. It didn't quite gel. It was nonetheless enjoyable.
Well, it was, the end piece turned out great. I mean, I think it could get a resurgence. Seems like limited TV series are coming back with Netflix, and it's all about TV now.
Yeah,
so
true.
I think it could come back. Well, you've done so much work over the next few years. You did Monk, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, Law and Order, Psych, Desperate Housewives. I mean, I think you made an appearance on like every show on TV almost.
Yeah, there's a time when I was that was sort of my goal. I watched TV shows so much growing up in the 60s and 70s, and there was always kind of a rotating kind of list of a cast of actors who you saw all the time, and I feel like I kind of achieved that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm not going to say the year because I'm probably wrong.
Don't say the years.
In the 2000s, you played the governor on Dallas.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, another great show. And this kind of started a trend for you, or maybe something you pursued, of playing authority figures in suits.
And playing douchebags in suits. Yeah.
I was going to say unlikable.
Everybody was great on that. Of course, it was the Dallas reboot. And Larry Hagman had recently passed before I started, but they kept his dressing room intact and they kept it locked the way it was. And I got to work with Lee Majors, who is a great guy. And so that was thrilling,
Yeah. So, well, were you a fan of the original Dallas?
I'm not sure I was. I mean, I was younger at the time, and it was like a sort of an older show. I don't think I was watching it. When I was younger and cool then.
Right.
So but I was aware of the Dallas phenomenon, Who Shot JR and all that stuff. It was the #1 show in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you met Mitch Pileggi on that, who connected us.
That's right. He's the guy. I got to kill him for that. Yeah.
Well, we mentioned iZombie a little bit, but you played another baddie on that, Vaughn Duclark. It seemed like you were just having fun with that role. Was it a lot of fun?
It was fun. It was great crew and great actors up there, and it was really fun because he was a bad guy, but he was a cool bad guy. He did yoga, and he took his Max Rager drug, or maybe actually he didn't, because those who took it eventually became flesh-eating zombies themselves. So he didn't take it, but he just made a lot of dough and drove fast cars, and then eventually was eaten by his own daughter. Oh well,
man, you've had some of the craziest deaths on screen.
Yeah.
Well, we could go on. I mean, your list of credits is huge, but we only have so much time. But I do want to mention your role in Ballers with Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah,
your scenes were hilarious together. And what was it like for you to work with Dwayne Johnson? And was he a likable guy to work with?
He's actually like 5'6" in real life.
Is he really?
No, of course not. He's like a superhero. He's like it's like walking onto the set of a Marvel movie and saying, "Oh, you don't wear any makeup or pads. You're actually could actually tear me apart like a boiled chicken, couldn't you? He's cool, approachable, incredibly professional, affable, intense. This guy is great, and he made me feel at home as much as somebody who's kind of in awe of somebody can be made to feel at home. That's one of my problems working in this industry, is that while I'm in it, I'm also a fan of people in it, and I immediately suborn myself to them, and like I turn into, like, 11-year-old fanboy, like, hi, Mr. Rock. I took pictures of him and all that stuff, but he could not have been cooler. And those scenes that we had where I had to be antagonizing a little bit, he was totally open. We did a lot of improvising. I was able to curse out The Rock and then have him come at me really angrily. There's one scene that's been seen a lot, I think, which is where I insult him, and he comes right up to me and he gives me the double finger in my face. And, it's both thrilling and terrifying to have this kind of giant, icon, curse you out. But you're used to it.
Yeah. And then they called cut, and you kicked his ass, right?
Oh, I pulled him. No, I would never humiliate him, but I pulled him aside and I said, "You'll never, ever do that to me again." And I was right, because I didn't do that.
Yeah, I still have that mallet, Mr. Rock.
Mr. Rock.
and you also recently did a sitcom with Fran Drescher, Indebted.
I know. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. You go.
No, I was going to say I'm sorry to hear that it was canceled recently, but was it fun working with her? Did you feel Queen's connection?
Totally. It was called Indebted. I definitely think it had potential to go on. Yes, we're both from Queens. We're same era, and we got along really well. She's fantastic. In fact, I'd go see a movie with her and The Rock in it. Like, they're both equally cool, in spite of, or maybe because of, their stature.
Right.
And she's known globally, and she's so much fun, and we had a great time. Yeah, great time.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed watching. I watched a couple episodes, and sorry to hear it won't go on, but just opens up the door for for something else. So,
well, that's right. Look, one of the inescapable things about having a career in this business is that it's full of rejection. It's up and down. There's no reliable kind of ascent. It's you're up one day, you're down the next. You're dumpster diving. You're getting an award. You're being, so it's really weird. It's a little weird.
Yeah. Somebody just commented 13 Reasons Why. What you're recurring on Netflix.
That's right.
I think your character gets too much crap. I mean, he doesn't have an easy job.
It's the worst high school ever. Okay, everybody's getting killed. That was a great series to be a part of. Yes, it was controversial, but it did a deep dive into psychology of school age people. Teenagers, and very, very difficult subject matter, but beautifully acted, beautifully written and directed, and it was fun for me to be a part of it. And once again, I played the principal D-bag. But like I say, it was such a crummy school.
Yeah,
that, I had PTSD. I had to hold those awful children together.
Right. Not an easy job for anybody to do.
Not an easy job.
Yeah. Well, there are a few viewer questions I'm gonna bring up on screen.
Okay.
Brian says, "Did you get to play with the chimp on the set in Odd Jobs episode of Wings? Any funny stories there?"
That's pretty obscure, Brian. Thanks. I didn't even know what the title of the episode was, but my only memory of that chimp is that it was really cute and was in the arms of the trainer. And I'd never worked with a chimp or a wild animal aside from Don Mancini before.
Well, yeah.
And,
at least I have good hair, though.
Yeah, that's true. But I hate when you reach over and groom me and start eating the nits off me. That's not for you to do.
Yeah.
All right. Let me finish the story for Brian. Anyway, so the chimp looked really cute and had a diaper, and I think I said, "Can I hold it?" And the trainer gave me the chimp, and the chimp looked at me as if to say, "There's somebody in here, man. There's somebody inside. I'm not a cute little furry monkey. And if you mess with me, I'm going to pull a vein out of your neck." It was like there was something going on beyond that of a puppy or something, which is super cute. There was a consciousness in there, and it freaked me out. And I kind of gently but firmly returned the baby chimp back to its owner, and I resolved never to work with kind of animals, really. Animals with as much intelligence as myself again.
Right. Yeah, monkeys, you got to be careful. So Matt says, what was it like to dance with Neve Campbell?
It was in Reefer Madness. It was great. She trained as a dancer. So I was the handicap there. I was not very good at all. And in fact, at one point, we had to I had to throw her in the air. I had to throw a human being into the air, which isn't nearly as easy as it ever looks on screen. And I at some point something happened, and I actually really hurt my shoulder, and so we had to eliminate that move. It had nothing to do with her; it had everything to do with me and my lack of expertise. But it was fun, and she was a dream. Super sweet and smart. And what do you want from me? That's all I got.
You got it. That summed it up.
All right, Matt. I hope you're satisfied. I hope you're Mattisfied.
Oh. Scott says, "Love Jennifer. Don't we all?"
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, it was really fun and memorable.
Jackie says, "My mom has a huge crush on Steven. I just showed her and loved the stream. She thought he could see her." She thought her mom could see you. You could see her mom.
I just showed her the love stream.
Now we're getting carried away. Come on.
A lot of ways with that one, yeah, but just stop showing your mother the love stream. It's not good. But thank you very, very much.
Yeah. Melissa says Wing should have been nominated for Emmys. I agree.
I don't think it may have been nominated for a guest star, I think, for Tyne Daly.
So many shows to compete with then.
Yeah, and like I say, it was almost like this utility show. It never got a lot of credit, but it was on for a long time.
Yeah. This one, do you miss the big sandwich?
Okay, now listen, Mary Higgins, Kyler. Big Sandwich, for those of you who are confused, was an iconic story. It wasn't even a story. Well, it was a storyline on Wings, where we made up the idea that everybody on Nantucket, every time they had a celebration, ordered one of those famous 6-foot heroes or hoagies. We called it the Big Sandwich, and we took it very seriously, and it was something that recurred in several episodes. So I do miss the Big Sandwich. This is getting very hard for me.
And it looks like the last question is Brian again. Did you see a lot of yourself in any of the characters on any of the shows or movies that you've been on? Which one most?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of me. I could relate to most of them. Some are really outrageous. Some of the darker villains I don't see myself in. In many ways, I guess the Brian character had the most obvious similarities. I mean, at the time we were both kind of young and carefree. And, I don't think I was nearly as dumb as he could be. Well, that's arguable. But I think the character of Brian and I were the closest. No more. I've grown up and lived some life, so I'm not the devil may care lunatic, and I don't have the brain capacity to fly, but I think he's the one I'm closest to.
Yeah.
I can't take it anymore.
Well, we didn't even get to touch on your great career on stage. I know you've done a lot of theater, but what's coming up next for you? Anything you can talk about that's we can expect?
Well, I guess obviously everything's more or less shut down. Things I think are starting to open up slowly. I'm actually doing an episode of a series called Social Distance by the creators of Orange is the New Black. This is for Netflix, and it basically takes place in this forum. It's kind of like a Zoom series, although not all of it. While there will be some scenes that are remarkably like what's happening now, I think there also is going to be some filming inside people's actual residences. And the way that's accomplished is you discuss scenes and the technicalities of shooting them with the director and with the cinematographer, and they actually ship you some equipment that, of course, you need to ship back. And you sort of film it yourself, and that's weird. I think it's necessary now, but I kind of hope it doesn't carry on that way, because we need cinematographers and camera operators and boom operators, and we need people to be able to keep their jobs and work. You know, technology is great and all, but if it eliminates human beings, I'm not for it. I think right now this is a necessity, maybe a bridging thing to do, but that's really the next thing I'm doing.
Okay. Well, it's always fun chatting with you, Stephen. Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you for turning up, all 107 of you. And like
108 still now. We got one more.
I'm going to die at 107. Thank you.
Well, yeah. Hopefully I'll see you at a convention in person. You know, in the next 6 months or.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. All right, Stephen. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes in the Zoom.
All right, buddy boy. Take care. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Great guy. So thanks to everyone who watched. If you're interested in having a one-on-one video meet and greet with Stephen, you've got about 5 minutes to book that. You'd have a lot of fun with him. It's at fullempirepromotions.com. So we'll give you about 5 more minutes to book that. And thanks so much for watching. We had a lot of fun. If you've already purchased your video meet and greet, you can click on the link you got in the email at your designated time slot, and we'll see you over there. And that's it for me. I'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with another talent, Annabeth Gish. So thanks so much. See you next time.